Biblical Minimalism, Chapter 2. Why do we have so much stuff? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. Luke 12:15. Until God began leading us to let go of our physical possessions, I never thought about how much stuff we had accumulated or why it was all still there. It never occurred to me that there were underlying reasons for it being there, or that these issues needed to manifest and be confronted. As long as we lived in that tan house with the green shutters, there was no reason whatsoever for us ever to let go of one single thing, or even wonder why we had it all. Though our house was not considered large by modern standards, it had plenty of excess space, considering there were only 3 of us living there. Along with having 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, there was an attached nearly 700 square foot garage with a ton of overhead storage. The attic spanned the full length of the house. Space was abundant, so why not fill it up with stuff? Rather than dealing with our excess possessions, I became proficient at boxing them up and either walking them out to the garage or asking Kevin to put them in the attic for me. I never had to deal with the question of whether I should keep something or let it go. Since there was no need, minimizing was the farthest thing from my mind. Had God willed us to stay in that living arrangement, there was enough space to allow me to hold on to every precious card and note Kevin has ever given or ever will give me, even if God were to give us 75 married years together. I could have clung to every piece of paper Zach ever drew a picture on, until he reached his 100th birthday, should I live to be 134, that is, and never run out of space. Our living situation was a stuffed clinger's dream. Zach and I had a ritual on the last school day of each of the 10 homeschool years spent living in that house. We always got a little sentimental as we realized our homeschooling journey was 1 year closer to reaching its destination, and we would reminisce over the year that just passed, gather his workbooks together, stack them in a box, add any accompanying paperwork and artwork, tape and label the box, and put it in the garage. Before we moved, those boxes had never been opened, nor had their contents seen the light of day since we taped them shut. I don't know how long I would have kept them had the Lord never led us to move, but I have a hunch they would have stayed right there until he called me home to heaven. Then dear Zach would have had the unpleasant and sad task of having to figure out what to do with them, and the heart-wrenching memories would have made him cry. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and this dear boy is his mama's son. Kevin has consistently prayed throughout Zach's life that God would give him a tender heart. Proof that God hears and answers prayer is that Zach has one of the most altruistic, sympathetic, kind, and tender hearts I have ever known. As long as we lived in that house and had all that room, I never had to ask myself why I was so insistent on keeping every single thing. I didn't have to deal with the underlying motivation, nor did I find it necessary to investigate what drove me to do what I did for so many years. Until I heard Jesus' call while riding on the lawnmower, it never occurred to me that we may one day leave that house. I genuinely thought it would turn out to be our forever earthly home. What I didn't realize until it became evident that we were going to make a geographical move is that all the extra space only enabled us to avoid dealing with some serious issues of the heart. God has a way of orchestrating our circumstances to reveal what lies beneath and forcing us to make hard choices. After beginning to minimize, then selling our home the following year, I felt that we had made major strides in reaching our minimizing destination. After all, we had sold and given away loads of stuff. But when moving day arrived, despite all our minimizing, we found that the remainder of our physical belongings took up nearly all of a 26-foot moving truck. Though we had downsized our belongings to what would fit into that truck and later into a 10 by 20-foot storage space, we still had so much excess, so much more than we will ever need. This fact did not hit me until the guys we hired to unload our belongings removed everything from the moving truck and spread it around the rented storage unit. One of the most surprising revelations of our minimalism journey happened right there. I was forced to see our stuff through a fresh lens and from a completely different perspective when it was removed from its familiar arrangement in our old home. At that point, the biggest question in my mind was, why on earth did we put ourselves through so much to bring this stuff? I was shocked by my reaction. The things that had seemed beyond precious to me at home, that I knew I could never part with, now, positioned outside of their familiar environment, suddenly felt estranged and even foreign to me. I couldn't believe it, but I felt emotionally unattached to a lot of our remaining possessions. It was almost as if they didn't belong to us at all, but that I was looking at another person's stuff. Seeing things in that light caused me to view them a lot more critically. I could not have been more taken aback by this epiphany. I felt ashamed as I watched the men unload and try their utmost to squeeze everything into the storage unit. I was sorry that it had been so hard for Kevin and Zach to load and move it all, and sorry that it was such a hard job for the men who were unloading it. And for what? Why did we own so much stuff? Why did we bring it all? Why was I so insistent on clinging to so many things that would now sit in a storage unit and never see the light of day for who knew how long? Even with all our minimizing before the move, we had merely skimmed the surface. Now came the task of answering difficult, incriminating questions, like why did we keep all this stuff in the first place? What drove me to cling to every homeschool workbook in which Zach had written? What made me refuse to let go of his baby stuff? Why was I still holding on to Dad's sweater? At the root of it all, there are what I call root reasons for the excess in our lives that grow from the core of our being. They are buried deep and never seen until we remove the layers that hide them. Then the true light shines, revealing their existence and exposing them for what they are. Throughout the process of minimizing, God started exposing those roots, and what I discovered lying beneath was not pretty. Roots run deep, and the deeper the root system, the more painful and tedious the process of removing them. Biblical minimalism has forced us to face up to the reality of the existence of these roots and to start and continue the undesirable task of eradicating them once and for all. At least two main root reasons were brought to light. Clinging to stuff brings a sense of stability. The first root reason I unearthed as to my justification for having so much stuff stemmed from living in an uncertain environment for so many years as a child. Moving so often and never feeling a strong sense of security caused me to cling to things for dear life. As long as I had the same things, the continual moving and giving up of what was at least somewhat familiar seemed a bit easier to handle. Stuff helped me to cope. Take my 5-foot paper rainbow and the butterfly stickers, for example. I lost count of the many walls they were attached to and detached from over the years. I would carefully remove them right before we moved, then strategically replace them on my new walls wherever we landed. I always hung them up the same way, the rainbow on top with the butterfly stickers placed in a certain pattern underneath. The rainbow and butterflies belonged to me, and even though the walls changed incessantly, positioning them in my new surroundings brought a sense of comfort, control, and stability. Looking back, I can see how the tendency to cling to things made me feel a sense of familiarity and normalcy, and how this propensity set a pattern for grown-up life without me even realizing it. Fast forward to 1988, when I pledged my heart and hand to Kevin Smith, the man of my dreams, the mate of my soul. I still had the stuff that I had clung to from childhood, mostly packed away in a few boxes. Of course, Kevin had his things too. We merged our possessions into our new life together. Right from the beginning of our marriage, we started accumulating more and more stuff. Once, when my sister, Sandy, and her husband, Richie, visited us, Richie commented that it usually took couples many years to obtain the number of possessions we owned, and we had only been married for a short time. This trend of collecting and accumulating continued through the years, so you can imagine how much stuff we had become encumbered with by the time God led us to begin our minimizing journey in earnest after 27 years of marriage. Without realizing what I was doing, I was perpetuating the tendencies of that little insecure girl by clinging to everything I could from the past. My childhood years, our early married years, Zach's growing up years, and everything in between. Even though my stable husband provided a sense of security I had never experienced as a child, I still imagined that I needed stuff to feel secure. Holding on to all of it satisfied that long ago yearning to keep life the same. Clinging to stuff builds a fairy tale bridge to the past. I am ashamed to admit it, but for 4 years after Mom died, all the clothes from her closet still hung on a clothing rack in our garage. I could not bear to face the fact that Mom was gone, she would not be coming back, and she would never wear those clothes again. Though I knew this was true, I didn't want to deal with that truth. As long as her clothes hung there, I felt bridged to the time she was still here. My subconscious mind was comforted as I imagined that she could somehow come back across that bridge. More shameful than that, the remnants of Dad's clothes were stored in a box in our overstuffed attic almost 15 years after the Lord called him home to heaven. When we began to minimize, we still owned Zachary's crib, changing table, swing, walker, and a lot of his baby clothes, as if holding on to those things would make him a baby again, as if clinging to them with all my might would somehow cause a time machine to appear that would transport us back to those baby days. Those precious possessions had no power to take us back to that carefree season of childhood. Those days have been lived. Regardless how many meltdowns I experienced while surrounded by things from the past, each bringing back its own special memories like a flood, the fact of the matter is, Mom and Dad are gone, and Zach is growing up. From this moment, he will only get older, progress forward, and continue growing into the man of God he was created, born, and designed to be. Sentimental roots run deep, but at some point we must let go of the past. It no longer exists and is not today's reality. Continually dwelling on something that will never again be is unhealthy. I didn't realize how much clinging to the past affects the present until something happened that caused Zach to feel hurt. Around the time of our move, I was notified that I would need to get a new phone and stop using my old trusty track phone, now obsolete. I instantly began to panic. It was not that I was emotionally attached to my old phone. Truly, I felt no connection with it. But what shot like a dart through my heart was the fact that Zach's little boy voice was recorded on the voicemail of the old phone, and I would never be able to hear that recording again. It was something I cherished and planned to keep forever. As I became upset, Zach turned to look at me and said, "Mama, it makes me feel so bad when you do this." I jerked my head in his direction. Do what? When you get upset over things that have to do with me not being little anymore, I'm still me. I'm still here. Zach's words hit me with such force. I never thought about how this made him feel. The truth of this was reinforced when it came time to deal with the sealed boxes that contained 10 years' worth of homeschooling. "I'll leave my schoolwork boxes until the very end, Mama," Zach said one day, as we loaded things from the storage unit into the bed of our truck. He knew how much I had been dreading going through them, feeling the pain of those days being far behind us, and then being forced to let them go. When the task could no longer be postponed, I found it to be every bit as hard as I dreaded it to be. I cried as I watched Zach drop his workbooks into several garbage bags, and again as he and Kevin walked them to the curb to be picked up by the trash collector early the next morning. At the moment it hurt, but the reality of what was happening didn't completely sink in until late that night after Zach had gone to bed. In those quiet moments the floodgates opened as a realization settled over me that something so precious was gone from my grasp. Kevin finally turned to me and asked, "Do you want me to go out there and bring it all back in?" Bless his dear heart. He is the kindest, most understanding man I have ever known. Although I felt badly for putting him through such a job, I felt I had no choice. To let it go so abruptly without taking my time going through it once more just felt like too much for me to handle. Zach could not have been more surprised when he found out the next morning what we had done. "Mama, why is this bothering you so much? I thought we were making such good progress." "Zach, it is just so hard. All those years of doing school together, and once I let the papers go, it is like there will be no proof of it ever happening." I instantly regretted my choice of words as his eyes spoke volumes, and he replied, "Mama, what do you mean? That stuff is just paper and lead. I am the proof. I am still here." Zach was right. He is the proof. What matters is the product, what is being produced. What matters is Zach and seeing the fine, godly young man he is growing into. What matters is that he can read and write proficiently, and he is learning how to live life. I was still going through his school stuff a few mornings later when I came across his art workbooks and drawings from a couple of years ago. It hit me that what I wanted to keep from it all were the finished products, not the workbooks. I wanted to see and hold on to the beautiful creations, paintings, and drawings that were produced as a result of those workbooks. As I came to this realization, Zach's words came back to me, "Mama, I am the proof." Every time I come across another one of Zach's baby blankets, a souvenir from when Kevin and I were dating, a whatnot that was dear to Mom's heart, or a little trinket Dad made, my heart feels like it is torn to pieces, and it is still so hard to let go. But I am finally beginning to understand that it is the people, not their things, that matter. It is the product, the thing produced, that is important. As Zach and I sat side by side through all those years of homeschooling and every other moment of the day, living life, Zach has soaked up what he is being taught. He is the living, breathing product of all the ongoing training Kevin and I are daily pouring into his life. What matters is that we pour into people, not into things. Our lives do not consist of the abundance of our possessions, nor do they make us who we are. We are so much more than that, and the people in our lives and the products they have become are what matter most. For the record, it took me a while, but I finally worked through the homeschooling workbooks by cutting out the few papers I really wanted to keep and turning loose of the rest. God allows us to keep certain things that we want in order to remember precious parts of our past, because He knows how important that is to us. But He frees us from continuing to live in that past. The choices are hard, but when they are faced and decided upon, we can move forward on this journey. In order to live life going forward, we must let go of what used to be and not look back. Living in the past is a futile endeavor and prevents us from truly living now. The Apostle Paul wrote in Philippians 3:13 and 14, "Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus." It takes a concentrated effort to forget those things which are behind. Our brains are configured to remember, not forget. But forget we must, in the sense that we do not allow the past to hold us prisoner. Exposing the root reasons for clinging to possessions is a painful course of action. Sometimes the truth is the hardest thing to face.